The JonBenet Ramsey Murder. Evidence, Theories, and Unanswered Questions, Part 2. Picture a silent Christmas night in Boulder, Colorado, 1996. A grand Tudor mansion glows with festive warmth, snow dusting the quiet streets outside. Inside, the Ramsey family, John, Patsy, Burke, and 6-year-old JonBenet, sleep soundly after a joyful holiday party. But in the shadows, something sinister waits. By dawn, a cryptic ransom note, a frantic 911 call, a chilling discovery in the basement will shatter that serenity forever, thrusting a little girl's murder into the global spotlight. Nearly 3 decades later, the question still haunts us. Who killed JonBenet Ramsey? Welcome to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's true crime podcast, where we unearth the mysteries that refuse to rest. I'm Jay Nicoll of Nicoll Investigations, and today, in part 2 of our deep dive into the JonBenet Ramsey case, we're peeling back the layers of suspicion, chasing the theories, and confronting the suspects who've kept this enigma alive. Was it a faceless intruder, leaving behind DNA and a boot print? Or does the truth lie closer to home, hidden in a bizarre ransom note and a family under scrutiny? From John and Patsy Ramsey to shadowy figures like Gary Oliva and Santa Claus with secrets, the trail twists through decades of dead ends. Yet with new DNA technology sparking hope, could justice finally be within reach? Buckle up, listeners, as we step back into the chilling puzzle of JonBenet's murder, a case where every clue raises more questions, and the past demands answers. This is Ontario Cold Cases, and the truth is waiting. Hello, I'm Jay Nicoll of Nicoll Investigations, and this is Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's true crime podcast. Ontario Cold Cases is a gripping true crime podcast that shines a light on unsolved murders, disappearances, and forgotten crimes from across the province and the world. With meticulous research, compelling storytelling, and a commitment to historical accuracy, we bring you the real stories of victims, investigators, and suspects, stories that demand to be heard. Each week, we take you deep into the world of true crime with a packed schedule of episodes. Tuesdays, historical true crime cases, exploring infamous and obscure crimes from history. Wednesdays, the Mick and Mac Mysteries, a thrilling fictional detective series set in 1950s Toronto. Thursdays, World Cold Case Thursday, investigating unsolved cases from around the globe. Sundays, Ontario Cold Cases, the latest episode uncovering an unsolved mystery from Ontario. From high-profile crimes that shock the nation to little-known cases waiting for justice, we uncover the truth, one case at a time. Join us as we explore the dark corners of history and mystery, where every clue could lead to answers and every case deserves a second look. Subscribe now wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts and never miss an episode of Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's true crime podcast. Summary of Part 1, the JonBenet Ramsey Murder and the Evidence. In Part 1 of the JonBenet Ramsey Murder, Evidence, Theories, and Unanswered Questions, we plunge in the heart of one of true crime's most perplexing cases. On December 25, 1996, the Ramsey family returned to their Boulder, Colorado mansion after a festive Christmas party, tucking 6-year-old JonBenet into bed. But the next morning, Patsy Ramsey's discovery of a 2.5-page ransom note demanding $118,000, eerily close to John Ramsey's recent bonus, set off a nightmare. By early afternoon, John found JonBenet's lifeless body in the basement, bound with cord, a garrote made from a paintbrush around her neck, and duct tape over her mouth. The autopsy revealed strangulation, and a severe skull fracture, confirming a brutal homicide. We explored the crime scene's haunting clues: a broken basement window suggesting an intruder, a high-tech boot print not belonging to the family, and DNA from an unknown male on JonBenet's clothing and under her fingernails. Yet contradictions abounded. A bowl of pineapple in her stomach clashed with her parents' timeline. Loose ligature marks hinted at staging, and the ransom note, written on the family's own paper with a practiced draft nearby, raised suspicions of an inside job. Was it a kidnapping gone wrong, or a carefully crafted deception? With over 1,400 pieces of evidence, from a mysterious rope to disputed stun gun marks, the case remains a maze of unanswered questions. Setting the stage for the theories and suspects will unravel in Part 2. Theories and suspects. Nearly 3 decades later, 2 primary theories continue to dominate the investigation: the intruder theory and the family involvement theory. Alongside these theories, numerous suspects have been scrutinized, yet no one has been definitively linked to the crime. The 2 main theories. Number 1, the intruder theory. The intruder theory posits that an unknown outsider entered the Ramsey home, killed JonBenet, and escaped undetected. This hypothesis is bolstered by several pieces of compelling physical evidence. DNA evidence. DNA from an unknown male was discovered on JonBenet's clothing, specifically mixed with her blood in her underwear and present under her fingernails. This genetic material didn't match John, Patsy, Burke Ramsey, or anyone in their immediate circle, suggesting the presence of an unidentified individual. The consistency of the DNA across multiple locations hints at a struggle, supporting the idea of an external attacker. Boot print. A distinct footprint from a Hi-Tec brand shoe was found near JonBenet's body in the basement. The Ramseys didn't own such shoes. The print couldn't be traced to anyone known to have been in the house, pointing to a possible intruder. Broken basement window. A basement window was found broken, with a suitcase positioned beneath it, potentially as a makeshift step. This has been cited as a feasible entry or exit point for someone unfamiliar with the home. Proponents of this theory, including retired detective Lou Smit, argue that these clues collectively indicate an outsider committed the crime. John Ramsey himself supports this view, suggesting the killer might be a masked intruder linked to a 1997 rape in Boulder, a lead that has yet to be substantiated. Number 2, the family involvement theory. In contrast, the family involvement theory suggests that someone within the Ramsey household, John, Patsy, or even their son Burke, was responsible with a crime possibly staged to mislead investigators. This theory hinges on the peculiarities of the ransom note and early suspicions about the family's behavior. The ransom note. Discovered by Patsy Ramsey before JonBenet's body was found. The note demanded $118,000, an amount strikingly close to John Ramsey's recent Christmas bonus. Written on paper from the Ramsey home, with a practice draft found in the same notepad, it contained personal details. Examples, references to John's Southern common sense that seemed unlikely for an outsider to know. Its length and dramatic tone also raise questions. Ransom notes are typically brief and direct, not sprawling narratives. Police focus. From the outset, Boulder police zeroed in on the Ramseys. The family's decision to hire attorneys immediately and delay formal police interviews, which didn't occur until over a year later, fueled speculation of a cover-up. Some theorize an accidental death, perhaps involving Burke, who was 9 at the time, maybe staged as a kidnapping gone wrong. Grand jury action. In 1999, a grand jury voted to indict John and Patsy for child abuse, resulting in death and accessory charges. But District Attorney Alex Hunter declined to prosecute, citing insufficient evidence for a conviction. has kept the theory alive in the public eye, despite the lack of a trial. While the family involvement theory lacks the concrete physical evidence of the intruder theory, its strength lies in the oddities of the ransom note and the Ramseys' initial interactions with law enforcement. The suspects investigated. Over the years, the investigation has cast a wide net, examining over 140 individuals. I will discuss some of the major ones next. John and Patsy Ramsey. John and Patsy Ramsey, the parents of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey, became central figures of suspicion following their daughter's brutal murder on December 26, 1996, in their Boulder, Colorado home. The case, marked by intense media scrutiny and investigative twists, has kept their names in the spotlight for decades. Why they were suspected. The ransom note. The discovery of a ransom note by Patsy Ramsey in the morning of JonBenet's disappearance is a pivotal piece of evidence that casts suspicion on the couple. Written on paper from a notepad in their home, the note was unusually lengthy, spanning 2.5 pages, and demanded $118,000, a sum strikingly close to John Ramsey's recent Christmas bonus. This odd specific amount suggested a sum that the author had intimate knowledge of the family's finances, pointing toward an inside job. The note's dramatic language, including threats to behead JonBenet if instructions weren't followed, added to its peculiarity. Further complicating matters, investigators found a practice draft of the note in the same notepad, implying it was composed on site rather than brought by an outsider. Handwriting analysis conducted by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation indicated similarities between Patsy's writing and the note, though experts could not conclusively prove she authored it. This ambiguity fueled theories that the note was a staged attempt to mislead police, possibly to cover up an accidental death or a family conflict. Their behavior after the murder. The Ramseys' actions in the wake of the crime also raised red flags. Rather than fully cooperating with law enforcement, they quickly hired attorneys and delayed formal police interviews for months. Their first public statement came via a televised interview before they spoke with investigators, and it wasn't until April and June of 1998, over a year later, that they gave detailed statements to police. To many, this reluctance suggested they were hiding something, amplifying suspicions of guilt. The crime scene itself added to the controversy. Before it was secured, friends and family were allowed into the home, potentially contaminating evidence. Some speculated this was intentional, though it could also reflect the chaos of the moment as the Ramseys grappled with their daughter's death. The grand jury indictment. In 1999, a grand jury secretly voted to indict John and Patsy Ramsey on charges of child abuse, resulting in death and being accessories to a crime. This decision, revealed publicly in 2013, indicated that a panel of citizens believed there was enough evidence to suggest the Ramseys either contributed to JonBenet's death or helped conceal it. However, then District Attorney Alex Hunter declined to prosecute, citing insufficient evidence for a conviction. The indictment's existence has kept the theory of family involvement alive in public disclosure. Evidence that led to their exoneration. DNA evidence. A major breakthrough came with advancements in forensic science. In 2003, DNA from an unknown male was identified on JonBenet's clothing, specifically in her underwear and under her fingernails. This genetic material did not match John, Patsy, their son Burke, or anyone in their immediate circle. The consistency of the DNA across multiple locations suggested it belonged to a single individual, likely the perpetrator, rather than random contamination. In 2008, Boulder County District Attorney Mary Lacey formally exonerated the Ramseys based on this evidence. In a letter to John Ramsey, Lacey stated that the DNA pointed to an intruder as the killer, effectively clearing the family of suspicion. The DNA was entered into the FBI's CODIS database in 2003, but is yet to match any known individual, leaving the intruder's identity unresolved. Physical evidence supporting an intruder. Several physical clues bolster the intruder theory. A boot print from a Hi-Tec brand shoe was found in the basement near JonBenet's body. The Ramseys did not own such footwear, and the print remained unexplained. A broken basement window with a suitcase position beneath it was highlighted by Detective Smit as a potential entry or exit point for an outsider. Rope discovered in a guest bedroom did not belong to the family, hinting at the presence of an unknown individual. Together, these findings support the idea that someone from outside the home entered, committed the crime, and left behind traceable evidence. Counter-arguments and ongoing debate. The Ramseys' exoneration has not silenced all doubts. Critics argue that the DNA evidence could have an innocent explanation, such as contamination from a factory worker who handled JonBenet's clothing before purchase. Sample was small and potentially degraded, leading some to question its reliability as definitive proof. Others note that the grand jury's indictment, though not pursued, reflects lingering uncertainties among those who reviewed the case in depth. Former Boulder Police Chief Mark Beckner, in a 2015 interview, acknowledged the DNA likely belonged to the killer but cautioned against fully exonerating the Ramseys based solely on that evidence. He suggested the case involved a complex mix of factors, leaving room for alternative interpretations. Current status: John Ramsey, now in his 80s, continues to seek answers, advocating for advanced DNA testing, including genetic genealogy, to identify the unknown male whose DNA was found at the scene. In January 2025, he met with Boulder's new police chief, Stephen Redfern, to discuss this possibility, expressing hope that modern technology could finally resolve the case. Patsy Ramsey passed away in 2006 from ovarian cancer, never witnessing a resolution. John, however, remains active in the public eye, frequently asserting his belief that an intruder killed his daughter and urging authorities to pursue new leads. John and Patsy Ramsey's involvement in the JonBenet Ramsey case has been a roller coaster of suspicion and vindication. The ransom note, their behavior, and the grand jury's indictment painted them as potential culprits. Yet the DNA evidence and physical clues, like the boot print and broken window, shifted the focus to an unknown intruder. Exonerated in 2008, they remain polarizing figures in a case that continues to captivate and confound nearly 3 decades later. Up next, Michael Helgoth. Michael Helgoth. Michael Helgoth emerged as a person of interest in the unsolved murder of JonBenet Ramsey. The case has gripped public attention since December 26, 1996. A local Boulder, Colorado resident, Helgoth drew suspicion due to circumstantial evidence, his proximity to the crime scene, and his mysterious suicide shortly after the murder. However, forensic evidence, particularly DNA, ultimately cleared him as a suspect. Background and connection to the case. Who was Michael Helgoth? Michael Helgoth was a 26-year-old auto salvage worker living in Boulder, Colorado, at the time of JonBenet Ramsey's death. He resided in a trailer park roughly 2 miles from the Ramseys' family home, a distance close enough to pique investigators' interest. Described as reclusive and occasionally erratic, Helgoth had a fascination with weapons and a small social circle. One key figure in his life was John Canady, a friend and mechanic who later provided critical but unverified information linking Helgoth to the crime. Circumstantial links to the murder. Helgoth's potential involvement hinged on several intriguing pieces of circumstantial evidence. Hi-Tec boots. A partial boot print from a Hi-Tec brand shoe was discovered near JonBenet's body in the Ramsey basement. The Ramseys did not own such boots, suggesting an intruder. After Helgoth's death, investigators found he possessed a pair of Hi-Tec boots, making him a person of interest. Stun gun. Retired Detective Lou Smit theorized that marks on JonBenet's body were caused by a stun gun, a device used to incapacitate victims. Helgoth owned a stun gun, adding another layer of suspicion. Suspicious statements. John Kennedy reported that Helgoth made cryptic remarks before and after the murder. In November 1996, Helgoth allegedly told Kennedy he and a partner were planning to make a lot of money around Christmas, mentioning a figure close to the $118,000 ransom note demand. After the murder, Kennedy claimed Helgoth mused about what it feels like to crack a skull, further raising red flags. These elements, combined with his proximity to the Ramsey home, positioned Helgoth as a compelling suspect, though the evidence remained indirect. Investigation and suicide. Helgoth's death. On February 14, 1997, just weeks after JonBenet's murder, Helgoth took his own life, shooting himself in the chest with a revolver at his home. His suicide came one day after Boulder District Attorney Alex Hunter announced during a press conference that the investigation was narrowing its focus on suspects. This timing led some to speculate that Helgoth killed himself out of fear of being caught, though no evidence directly tied his death to the Ramsey case. Posthumous scrutiny. Following his suicide, investigators searched Helgoth's property and interviewed associates. They confirmed his ownership of Hi-Tec boots and a stun gun. These items alone couldn't conclusively place him at the crime scene. John Kennedy pushed the theory of Helgoth's guilt, alleging the existence of a confession tape, though no such recording ever surfaced. Despite these efforts, the investigation into Helgoth hit a dead end, lacking the physical or testimonial evidence needed to build a solid case. Why Helgoth was ruled out. DNA evidence. The definitive factor in clearing Helgoth was forensic DNA analysis. In 2003, DNA from an unknown male was extracted from JonBenet's clothing, specifically her underwear and beneath her fingernails. Believed to belong to the killer, this genetic material was tested against Helgoth's DNA and found not to match. The sample, entered in the FBI's CODIS database, is yet to identify its source but consistently points to a single individual who is not Helgoth. In 2008, Boulder County District Attorney Mary Lacey used this DNA evidence to exonerate the Ramsey family, and by extension, Helgoth. The mismatch effectively dismantled the case against him, shifting the focus to an unidentified perpetrator. Lack of direct evidence. Beyond the DNA, no physical evidence, such as fingerprints, fibers, or witness accounts, linked Helgoth to the Ramsey home. His Hi-Tec boots and stun gun, while suggestive, were not unique to him, and no forensic match tied them to the crime scene. His alleged statements relayed through Kennedy were hearsay and uncorroborated. Additionally, his suicide could have stemmed from personal issues unrelated to the murder, leaving it as a suspicious coincidence rather than proof of guilt. Current status: Michael Helgoth is no longer considered a suspect in the JonBenet Ramsey case. The DNA evidence has been a cornerstone of his exoneration, and law enforcement has shifted its attention elsewhere. The Boulder Police Department continues to treat the case as an active cold case, leveraging advances in genetic genealogy and forensic technology to pursue the unknown male whose DNA was found in JonBenet. While Helgoth's name occasionally resurfaces in public speculation, official investigations have dismissed his involvement. Conclusion: Michael Helgoth's brief tenure as a suspect in the JonBenet Ramsey case was driven by tantalizing circumstantial clues. His proximity to the crime, ownership of Hi-Tec boots and a stun gun, and a suspiciously timed suicide. Yet the absence of direct evidence and a conclusive DNA match have ruled him out as a killer. His story reflects the complexities of the Ramsey investigation, a case filled with promising leads that often dissolve under scrutiny. Up next, Bill McReynolds. Bill McReynolds. Bill McReynolds, a retired journalism professor and part-time Santa Claus, emerged as a suspect in the unsolved murder of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey due to his direct connection to the Ramsey family and several intriguing, albeit circumstantial, details. While he was thoroughly investigated by the Boulder Police Department, no conclusive evidence linked him to the crime, and he was never charged. Background and connection to the Ramsey family. Who was Bill McReynolds? Bill McReynolds was a 67-year-old resident of Boulder, Colorado in 1996, when JonBenet Ramsey was murdered. A former journalism professor at the University of Colorado, he retired from academia and lived with his wife, Janet, who was also a writer. Known for his warm personality and storytelling skills, McReynolds occasionally played Santa Claus at local events. In December 1996, the Ramseys hired him to portray Santa at their Christmas party, held just days before JonBenet's death on December 25, 1996. This role gave him direct access to the Ramsey home and personal interaction with JonBenet, making him a figure of interest after the murder. Circumstantial ties to the case. Several aspects of McReynolds' life and behavior drew suspicion. Proximity to the crime. As Santa Claus at the Ramseys' party, McReynolds had been inside their home, giving him familiarity with its layout and the family's routines. This raised the possibility that he could have returned later, though no evidence supported this. A personal tragedy. In 1974, exactly 22 years before JonBenet's murder, McReynolds' daughter was kidnapped. She was released unharmed after a brief abduction, but the timing, occurring on the same day of the year as JonBenet's death, caught investigators' attention. Some speculate that this event might have left a psychological mark, though no evidence linked it to a motive. Affection for JonBenet. McReynolds reportedly had a special fondness for JonBenet. During the Christmas party, he gave her a vial of glitter as a gift, which he kept by her bedside. After her death, he made a striking statement. "She was the only one in the world to me." While this could reflect a Santa-like affection, some found it overly personal or suspicious. The timeline discrepancy. McReynolds initially told police he left the Ramsey home at 9:30 p.m. on Christmas night, but later adjusted this to 10:30 p.m. This minor inconsistency fueled speculation, though it was not significant enough to build a case. These factors painted McReynolds as an intriguing figure, but they remained circumstantial without forensic backing. Investigation into McReynolds' involvement. Police scrutiny. The Boulder Police Department investigated McReynolds extensively due to his connection to the family and the oddities surrounding him. Evidence collection. Authorities collected hair samples and handwriting samples from McReynolds to compare against evidence from the crime scene. His handwriting was analyzed against the ransom note, a key piece of evidence written on paper from the Ramsey home. But experts found no match. Alibi and physical condition. McReynolds claimed he was recovering from surgery at the time of the murder, which left him too weak to commit such a violent act. His wife Janet supported his alibi, stating he was home with her on the night of December 25-26, 1996. While not airtight, this account was never contradicted by solid evidence. Ransom note theory. Given his background as a writer and professor, some theorized McReynolds could have crafted the unusually detailed ransom note. However, with no forensic link to the note, this idea remains speculative. Grand jury appearance. In 1999, McReynolds testified before the grand jury convened to review the Ramsey case. Despite this step, the grand jury did not indict him and no charges were filed. The details of his testimony remain sealed, leaving little public insight into what was discussed. Why McReynolds was not charged. Absence of physical evidence. The lack of concrete evidence was a primary reason McReynolds was ruled out. DNA evidence. Unknown male DNA found on JonBenet's clothing and under her fingernails, considered a critical clue, did not match McReynolds. This mismatch effectively eliminated him as a source of this key forensic evidence. No forensic connection. Beyond DNA, no fingerprints, fibers, or other physical traces tied McReynolds to the crime scene in the Ramsey basement. A Hi-Tec blueprint found near JonBenet's body also did not match any of his footwear. Insufficiency of circumstantial clues. While the circumstantial details were compelling to some, they lacked substance under scrutiny. The 1974 kidnapping. The 22-year-old anniversary of his daughter's abduction was a striking coincidence. But no evidence suggested it was more than that. It did not establish a pattern or motive related to JonBenet's murder. Behavioral quirks. McReynolds' affectionate comments about JonBenet and the shifting timeline were notable, but not incriminating. His fondness could be explained by his Santa Claus persona, and the timeline change was minor. Alibi support. His wife's confirmation of his presence in home, combined with his post-surgery condition, proved a reasonable explanation for his whereabouts. Skeptics questioned his reliability, but no evidence disproved it. Aftermath and public perception. McReynolds' later years and death. Bill McReynolds steadfastly maintained his innocence until his death in 2002 at age 72. His family defended his reputation, portraying him as a kind gentleman and capable of violence. His passing closed the chapter in any further questioning, though it did not silence speculation. Lingering theories. McReynolds remains a footnote in the JonBenet Ramsey case, particularly among those who support the intruder theory but question the main suspects. Some suggest he might have been part of a larger conspiracy, though no evidence backs this claim. His connection to the family and the time of his daughter's abduction keep his name alive in discussions, even if only as a curious aside. Conclusion: Bill McReynolds' role as Santa Claus, the Ramseys' Christmas party, his personal history and his interactions with JonBenet made him a suspect worth investigating in her murder. However, the absence of physical evidence, most notably the DNA mismatch, and the fragility of circumstantial clues led authorities to clear him. While his story adds an intriguing layer to the JonBenet Ramsey mystery, McReynolds was never charged, and his involvement remains an unproven theory in a case that continues to captivate and confound. Up next, Gary Oliva. Gary Oliva. Gary Oliva, convicted sex offender with a history of violent crimes against children, has long been a person of interest in the unsolved murder of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey in 1996. While his proximity to the crime scene, disturbing obsession with JonBenet, and alleged confessions have fueled suspicion, DNA evidence has cast doubt on his involvement. Background and criminal history. Gary Oliva, now 60 years old, has a well-documented history of criminal behavior, particularly targeting children. 1990. Arrested in Oregon for sexually abusing a 7-year-old girl, marking the beginning of his record as a sex offender. 1991. While on probation for the Oregon assault, Oliva attempted to strangle his mother with a telephone cord. According to a 2019 Daily Mail report, he threatened her, saying, "I should have killed you a long time ago," and was arrested after the attack. 2016. Arrested in Boulder, Colorado for possessing child pornography. During this arrest, police discovered over 300 images related to JonBenet Ramsey on his phone. including autopsy photos and images of shrines he had created in her memory. Current status: Aliva was released from prison in January 2024 after serving less than 8 years of a 10-year sentence for the 2016 child pornography charges. He's currently on parole but has reportedly failed to check in with authorities, with his whereabouts listed as transient in Denver, Colorado. Aliva's violent past and fixation on JonBenet have made him a compelling figure in the investigation, though significant evidence challenges his culpability. Connection to the JonBenet Ramsey case. Aliva's ties to the JonBenet Ramsey murder are rooted in his physical proximity and obsessive behavior. Proximity: in December 1996, when JonBenet was killed, Aliva was living in Boulder, Colorado, approximately 10 blocks from the Ramsey home. As a transient and registered sex offender, he often stayed at a homeless shelter near the residence. Obsession with JonBenet. Aliva attended a candlelight vigil outside the Ramsey home on the 1-year anniversary of JonBenet's death in 1997. Retired Detective Lou Smit, featured in a 2002 episode of 48 Hours Investigates, noted this as suspicious, stating, "Many times criminals do return to the scene." Images and writings. The 2016 arrest revealed Aliva's deep fixation on JonBenet. His phone contained 335 photos related to her, including 19 autopsy images, pictures of shrines, and poems he wrote such as Ode to JonBenet. These elements, combined with his criminal background, have kept Aliva in the spotlight as a potential suspect. Why Aliva became a suspect. Several factors contribute to Aliva being considered a suspect in the JonBenet Ramsey case. Criminal history. Aliva's prior convictions for child sexual abuse, strangulation attempts align with aspects of JonBenet's murder, which involved strangulation with a garrote made from a paintbrush and cord. Alleged confessions. Phone call. Michael Vell, a high school classmate of Aliva's, claims that shortly after JonBenet's body was discovered on December 26, 1996, Aliva called him in distress, saying, "I heard a little girl." Vell reported this to Boulder police but claims they did not follow up. Prison letters. 2019, while incarcerated for child pornography, Aliva allegedly wrote letters to Vell confessing to the murder. In one he stated, "I never loved anyone like I did JonBenet, and yet I let her slip and her head bashed in half, and I watched her die. It was an accident." Another letter claimed, "JonBenet completely changed me and removed all evil from me." Behavioral links. Vell has pointed out that Aliva had a fascination with knots and stealing art supplies, such as paintbrushes during their school years. The use of a paintbrush in JonBenet's strangulation has led Vell to see this as a potential connection. These confessions, behavioral patterns, alongside his proximity and obsession, have made Aliva a focal point for some investigators and amateur sleuths, despite contradictory evidence. DNA evidence and contradictions. A significant piece of evidence undermines the case against Aliva. DNA mismatch. DNA from an unknown male was found in JonBenet's clothing and under her fingernails, believed to belong to her killer. Testing has shown that his DNA does not match Aliva's genetic profile. In 2008, Boulder County District Attorney Mary Lacey cited this evidence to exonerate the Ramsey family, and it similarly cast doubt on Aliva's involvement. Police skepticism. The Boulder Police Department has acknowledged investigating Aliva, particularly after his confessions came to light. However, they have not pursued charges, likely due to the DNA discrepancy, and have stated there are no new updates regarding his status as a suspect. The DNA evidence remains a critical barrier to linking Aliva definitively to the crime, though some question the reliability of the crime scene evidence due to an early investigative missteps. Current status and recent developments. Aliva's current situation and the investigation's progress include the following: release and disappearance. After his release from prison in January 2024, Oliva was required to comply with parole conditions. However, he's since failed to check in with authorities, and as of November 2024, his whereabouts are unknown, listed as transient in Denver. Media attention. A 2024 Netflix documentary, Cold Case, Who Killed JonBenet Ramsey, re-examined Oliva's potential role in the murder, highlighting his confessions and circumstantial evidence, while noting the DNA mismatch. Police position. Boulder police maintain that they are aware of Oliva and have explored his possible involvement. In response to inquiries about his confessions, they have declined to comment further, stating only that they continue to investigate the case without specifying suspects. The JonBenet Ramsey murder remains unsolved, with ongoing efforts to leverage advancements in DNA technology and revisit existing leads. The conclusion? Gary Oliva's profile as a suspect in the JonBenet Ramsey case is marked by compelling circumstantial evidence and significant contradictions. His criminal history, proximity to the crime scene, obsession with JonBenet, and alleged confessions paint a troubling picture of a man who could plausibly be involved. However, the DNA evidence, a cornerstone of the investigation, does not match his profile, leaving his guilt in question. While Oliva remains a figure of interest, the lack of forensic confirmation in his current status of parolee at large keep the case unresolved. The Boulder Police Department continues its work, but as of now, Gary Oliva is neither charged nor conclusively cleared in the murder of JonBenet Ramsey. Up next, Randy Simmons. Randy Simmons. Randy Simmons, a photographer who worked with JonBenet Ramsey in her beauty pageant portfolio, became a suspect in the 1996 murder due to his proximity to the family, unusual behavior following the crime, and a later criminal conviction. However, DNA evidence ultimately ruled him out as the killer. Background and connection to JonBenet Ramsey. Randy Simmons was a professional photographer active in Colorado's child beauty pageant community during the 1990s. He photographed numerous young pageant contestants, including JonBenet Ramsey, a 6-year-old beauty queen, was found murdered in her family's Boulder, Colorado home on December 26, 1996. Simmons had a direct connection to the Ramsey family, having been hired by JonBenet's mother, Patsy Ramsey, in June 1996 to take pageant photos of the child. He spent a day with JonBenet and Patsy during the session. They are describing Patsy as a devoted and loving mother in an interview with People magazine. Patsy was your normal mom, who absolutely loved her kid. She had the opportunity to spend a huge amount of time with JonBenet, and they were just really close. This professional relationship placed Simmons in the Ramsey family's orbit, making him a person of interest when the investigation began. Why Simmons was considered a suspect. Several factors drew suspicion to Simmons in the aftermath of JonBenet's murder. Erratic behavior post-murder. After JonBenet's death, Simmons displayed behavior that many found suspicious. According to Stephen Singular's 1999 book, Presumed Guilty, Simmons made late-night phone calls to pageant mothers, screaming and crying, and repeatedly insisted, "I did not kill JonBenet. I did not kill JonBenet." These unsolicited denials, at a time when he was not publicly named a suspect, raised eyebrows and suggested possible guilt or distress related to the crime. 1998 arrest for public indecency. In October 1998, Simmons was arrested in Genoa, Colorado, for walking naked down a residential street. During this incident, he again spontaneously told the arresting officer, "I didn't kill JonBenet," despite no one accusing him at the time. This arrest highlighted his unstable behavior and kept him in the spotlight as a potential suspect. 2019, child pornography conviction. In July 2019, Simmons was arrested in Oregon for downloading child pornography. The crime for which he was convicted and sentenced to prison. While this offense occurred over 2 decades after JonBenet's murder, it was unrelated to the case. It intensified public investigative scrutiny due to its disturbing nature and possible implications about his character. These elements, prior access to JonBenet, strange actions following her death, and his criminal history, combined to make Simmons a figure of interest in the investigation. Investigation and DNA evidence. Despite the circumstantial reasons for suspecting Simmons, forensic evidence and police findings did not support his involvement. A DNA mismatch. The Boulder Police Department tested Simmons' DNA against the unknown male DNA found in JonBenet's clothing and under her fingernails, believed to belong to her killer. Simmons' DNA did not match, a critical factor in ruling him out as the perpetrator. This DNA evidence has been a cornerstone in the case, narrowing the pool of viable suspects. No other forensic links. Beyond the DNA, investigators found no fingerprints, fibers, or other physical evidence connecting Simmons to the Ramsey home or the crime scene. His handwriting also did not match the ransom note left at the scene, further weakening any case against him. Police findings. The Boulder Police Department conducted a thorough investigation into Simmons, including the interviews and examination of his alibi. Former Boulder County Sheriff's Detective Steve Ainsworth, who questioned Simmons, noted that while his behavior was odd, there was no concrete evidence linking him to the murder. The lack of substantive proof led authorities to shift focus elsewhere. Theories and public speculation. Even after being cleared by DNA, some continue to question whether Simmons played a role in the crime. The accomplice theory. One theory suggests that Simmons, while not the killer, might have been involved indirectly, perhaps through an association with the person whose DNA was found at the scene. Former investigator John San Agustin speculated that if Simmons had ties to the actual perpetrator, he could still be implicated in a broader conspiracy. However, no evidence supports this hypothesis. Behavioral suspicions. Simmons' unprompted denials and subsequent criminal behavior kept him a topic of discussion among case followers. Some interpret his actions as potential indicators of guilt or knowledge, though this remains speculative without forensic backing. These theories persist in the absence of definitive answers, but they lack the evidentiary foundation to alter Simmons' official status in the case. Current status. Randy Simmons is currently incarcerated in Oregon, serving a 10-year sentence for his 2019 child pornography conviction. His DNA has been definitively ruled out as a match to the crime scene evidence, and the Boulder Police Department no longer considers him a suspect. Conclusion: Randy Simmons' involvement in the JonBenet Ramsey case is a mix of intriguing circumstantial details and conclusive exoneration. His role as JonBenet's pageant photographer, coupled with his bizarre behavior after her death and a later child pornography conviction, made him a suspect in the eyes of some. Yet the DNA evidence, the most significant clue in this unsolved murder, did not match his profile, and no other physical evidence ties him to the crime. While speculation about his possible indirect involvement lingers, the Boulder Police Department's investigations found no basis to pursue him further. Simmons remains a footnote in a case that continues to puzzle investigators and the public nearly 30 years later. Up next, John Brewer Eustace. John Brewer Eustace. John Brewer Eustace briefly emerged as a suspect in the unsolved murder of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey due to his criminal behavior and a circumstantial link to the case. However, after a thorough investigation, he was ruled out as a suspect. Background and criminal history. John Brewer Eustace was born in California and lived a transient lifestyle, drifting across the western and southern United States while working various labor jobs. A high school dropout, he had no fixed residence or stable career. His name surfaced in March 1997 when he turned himself in to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg County Police in North Carolina for abducting 2-year-old Elizabeth Bradwell from her home. Eustache had entered the Bradwell residence by removing a window screen, kidnapped the child, and held her for several days before abandoning her in a neighbor's yard. She was found alive but deeply traumatized. During the investigation of the Bradwell case, police searched Eustache's belongings and found a scrapbook containing clippings about the Ramsey family, with a particular focus on JonBenet's murder. This discovery, paired with the method of entry in both his crime and the Ramsey case, entering through a window, prompted authorities to notify the Boulder Police Department, who were investigating JonBenet's death. Why Eustache became a suspect. Several factors led investigators to consider Eustache a potential suspect in JonBenet's murder. Method of entry. In both the Bradwell abduction and the Ramsey case, the perpetrator entered the home through a window. In JonBenet's case, a broken basement window was theorized by some as the intruder's entry point, but this remains a point of contention. Scrapbook of clippings. The scrapbook in Eustache's possession, filled with articles and images about JonBenet's murder, suggested he had an unusual interest in the case, raising suspicions of possible involvement. Timing. Eustache's crime in Charlotte occurred just 3 months after JonBenet's murder on December 25, 1996, leading some to speculate about a connection. Based on these similarities, Boulder police detectives traveled to North Carolina to interview Eustache and explore any links to the Ramsey case. Investigation and exoneration. Despite initial suspicions, Eustache was ruled out as a suspect in JonBenet's murder due to compelling evidence. A DNA mismatch. Unknown male DNA found in JonBenet's clothing and under her fingernails, believed to belong to her killer, did not match Eustache's DNA when tested. This forensic evidence was pivotal in eliminating him as a suspect. Solid alibi. Investigators confirmed that Eustache had a verifiable alibi for the night of JonBenet's murder. He was working at a factory at the time. Employment records placed him far from Boulder, Colorado on December 25, 1996. Lack of physical evidence. Beyond the DNA and alibi, no fingerprints, fibers, or other physical evidence tied Eustache to the Ramsey home. His scrapbook, while unsettling, contained only publicly available tabloid clippings and no unique details about the crime. After questioning Eustache and reviewing the evidence, the Boulder Police Department concluded he had no involvement in JonBenet's death. The investigation into him was thorough but short-lived, as the facts did not support a connection. Current status. Cleared in the Ramsey case, Eustache faced justice for his crimes in North Carolina. He was convicted on charges including first-degree burglary, kidnapping, rape, and multiple counts of indecent liberties with a child related to the Bradwell abduction. In 1997, he received a sentence of 98 years, 11 months, and 20 days in prison. Now 59 years old, Eustache is incarcerated at the Pamlico Correctional Institution in North Carolina, with his next parole review scheduled for December 2024. Conclusion: John Brewer Eustache's brief considerations as a suspect in the JonBenet Ramsey case stem from similarities in his criminal methods and his possession of a scrapbook about the murder. However, DNA evidence, confirmed alibi, and the absence of any direct link to the crime scene led authorities to rule him out conclusively. Up next, John Mark Carr. John Mark Carr. John Mark Carr briefly captured global attention in 2006 when he confessed to killing JonBenet Ramsey, only for his claims to unravel under scrutiny. His dramatic emergence and subsequent elimination as a suspect highlight the challenges of sifting through false leads in this high-profile case. Background and connection to the case. Who was John Mark Carr? John Mark Carr was a 41-year-old former schoolteacher with a troubling history when he entered the spotlight in 2006. Born in 1964, Carr had lived in various parts of the United States, including Alabama and California, and had a documented obsession with young girls. He'd been married briefly to a 13-year-old girl in the 1980s, later annulled, and faced charges in 2001 for possessing child pornography, after which he fled the country. By 2006, he was living in Thailand, working as a teacher. Authorities arrested him in connection to the Ramsey case. Circumstantial links to the crime. Carr's connection to the JonBenet Ramsey case stemmed entirely from his own statements. Confession. In August 2006, Carr contacted Michael Tracy, a University of Colorado professor who produced documentaries about the Ramsey case. Over email exchanges and phone calls, Carr claimed responsibility for JonBenet's death, stating he'd been with her when she died and that her killing was an accident. He provided vivid, albeit vague, details, such as saying he loved JonBenet and was present during her final moments. Obsession with the case. Carr's emails revealed an intense fixation on JonBenet. He wrote about her in a disturbingly personal way, suggesting a psychological connection, though not necessarily a physical one. His knowledge of the case appeared to have come from publicly available information rather than insider details. Physical proximity concerns. At the time of the murder in December 1996, Carr's whereabouts were unclear. He claimed he had been in Boulder, but no evidence placed him there. He lived in Atlanta, Georgia, where the Ramsey family once resided. There was no record of him being in Colorado during the crime. Carr's confession thrust him into the spotlight, prompting his arrest in Thailand and extradition to the United States. For a moment, it seemed the decade-old mystery might finally be solved. Carr's arrest and investigation, and the media frenzy. Carr's arrest on August 16, 2006, sparked a media storm. Cameras captured him sipping champagne on a flight from Bangkok to Los Angeles, and his cryptic statements like, "I was with JonBenet when she died," only fueled speculation. The public and press were eager for closure, but investigators quickly grew skeptical. Scrutiny of his confession. As authorities dug into Carr's claims, inconsistencies emerged. Lack of specifics. Carr's account lacked details that only a killer would know, such as the exact method of the murder or specifics about the ransom note. His story seemed rehearsed and aligned with wildly reported facts, rather than privileged knowledge. Behavioral oddities. Carr's demeanor, calm yet theatrical, raised doubts. Some speculated he was seeking attention, suffering from a delusion, rather than confessing to an actual crime. Family testimony. Carr's ex-wife, Laura Knutson, provided an alibi, stating he was with her and their children in Alabama on Christmas 1996, hundreds of miles from Boulder. While not definitive, this cast further doubt in his involvement. Why Carr was ruled out. DNA evidence. The definitive blow to Carr's credibility came from DNA testing. The same unknown male DNA found in JonBenet's clothing, believed to belong to her killer, did not match Carr's genetic profile. This evidence, first identified in 2003 using advanced forensic techniques, had already cleared other suspects like Michael Helgoth, and it now exonerated Carr as well. Boulder District Attorney Mary Lacey announced on August 28, 2006, that Carr was no longer a suspect due to the DNA mismatch. No corroborating evidence. Beyond the DNA, investigators found no physical evidence linking Carr to the crime scene. There were no fingerprints, fibers, or witness placing him in Boulder, and his confession didn't align with the forensic facts, like the garrote used in the strangulation or the stun gun theory that some endorsed. His story appeared to be a fabrication, possibly driven by his fixation on JonBenet. Psychological motivation. Experts suggested Carr's confession was a product of fantasy or desire for notoriety. His history of obsession with young girls in the Ramsey case pointed to a disturbed individual seeking to insert himself in a notorious narrative, rather than a genuine perpetrator. After his release, Carr continued to make bizarre public statements, reinforcing this view. Aftermath and speculation. Legal outcome. With no evidence to hold him on the Ramsey case, Carr was released after the DNA results. He faced extradition to California for the earlier child pornography charges, but those were dropped due to lost evidence. Carr faded from the headlines, though he occasionally resurfaced with odd claims, including identified as a woman named Alexis Reich in later years. Lingering theories. Some armchair detective still question whether Carr had a peripheral role, perhaps knowing the real killer or exaggerating a minor connection. However, law enforcement and forensic experts dismiss these ideas, citing the DNA evidence and lack of substantiation as conclusive. Conclusion? John Mark Carr's brief tenure as a suspect in the JonBenet Ramsey case was a sensational detour that ultimately led nowhere. His confession, while chilling, lacked substance and was contradicted by the DNA evidence that remains the strongest clue in the investigation. Carr's story serves a cautionary tale about the power of false confessions to derail justice and captivate the public, leaving the true identity of JonBenet's killer as elusive as ever. Despite extensive scrutiny, none of these suspects have been conclusively connected to JonBenet's murder. The investigation has reviewed over 1,400 pieces of evidence and generated more than 50,000 pages of documents, yet the trail remains cold. John Ramsey's belief in a masked intruder tied to a 1997 Boulder rape reflects one of many unproven hypotheses, underscoring the case's complexity. This theory is primarily championed by John Ramsey, JonBenet's father, who believes the same individual responsible for his daughter's murder in December 1996 may have committed an assault in Boulder 9 months later in September 1997. The 1997 rape incident. The 1997 case involves a masked intruder who broke into the home of a 12-year-old girl in Boulder, Colorado. This girl attended the same dance studio as JonBenet Ramsey, a detail that has fueled speculation about a connection. The intruder entered the home while the family was away, hid inside, and waited until they returned and went to sleep. He then attempted to sexually assault the girl, but her mother intervened, scaring the attacker off. The assailant fled the scene and the case remains unsolved to this day. John Ramsey's theory. John Ramsey has repeatedly pointed to the similarities between this incident and his daughter's murder. Method of entry. In both cases, the intruder allegedly entered the home while the family was absent and waited for their return. Timing. The attacks occurred after the family's gone to sleep, suggested a calculated approach. Location. Both incidents took place in Boulder, with the victims linked through the dance studio. Ramsey has expressed frustration with the Boulder Police Department's handling of this lead, accusing them of dismissing it outright. He has noted that the then police chief rejected the connection because the 1997 victims survived, a stance Ramsey called absurd. He believes the intruder was already inside the Ramsey home when they returned from a Christmas party on December 25, 1996, waited until they were asleep, and then attacked JonBenet. Supporting voices. The broader intruder theory, not specific to the masked intruder, is being supported by retired detective Lou Smit, who worked on the Ramsey case for the Boulder County District Attorney's Office. Smit argued that an intruder entered the Ramsey home through a basement window, possibly using a suitcase found beneath it to facilitate the crime. He cited DNA evidence from an unknown male found in JonBenet's clothing and under her fingernails, which did not match any Ramsey family members, as proof of an outsider's involvement. However, Smit's focus was not explicitly on the 1997 rape case. This theory clashed with the police's early focus on the Ramsey family, leading to his resignation in 1998. Police response. The Boulder Police Department has consistently downplayed any link between the 1997 rape and JonBenet's murder. Former police chief Mark Beckner stated in 2000 that while there were some similarities, it's such as the intruder's stealthy entry, detectives found no definitive evidence connecting the two cases. No DNA or other forensic evidence has emerged to substantiate Ramsey's hypothesis, and the police have not pursued this lead further. Current status: despite John Ramsey's advocacy and the attention the theory has received in media coverage, the masked intruder remains an unproven hypothesis. The 1997 rape case, while sharing some circumstantial parallels with JonBenet's murder, lacks concrete evidence tying it to her death. The Boulder Police Department continues to investigate the Ramsey case, incorporating advances in DNA technology. But as of now, the connection to the masked intruder is speculative and unsupported by official findings. In summary, the additional information about the masked intruder linked to the 1997 rape centers on John Ramsey's belief in a connection, bolstered by circumstantial similarities, is an interpretation of the intruder's behavior. However, without forensic corroboration, remains one of many unresolved theories in the enduring mystery of JonBenet Ramsey's murder. Current status and recent developments. The JonBenet Ramsey case remains an open investigation, classified as a cold case by the Boulder Police Department, which provides annual updates on its website. The scale of the effort is staggering. Detectives have followed up on over 21,000 tips, letters, and emails, traveling to 19 states to interview more than 1,000 individuals. Yet no arrest has been made, and the killer's identity remains elusive. Recent years have brought renewed focus and cautious optimism. A multidisciplinary team. As of December 2024, a team of experts employing modern scientific techniques reported progress in re-examining evidence. Specific advancements aren't detailed publicly, but the effort signals ongoing commitment. Advances in DNA technology. The most promising development lies in genetic genealogy, a method that uses DNA to trace family trees and identify suspects, as seen in killers like the Golden State Killer. The unknown male DNA from the crime scene entered in the FBI's CODIS database in 2003 without a match could benefit from this approach. John Ramsey's advocacy. In January 2025, John Ramsey met with Boulder's new police chief, Stephen Redfern, to discuss further DNA testing. Ramsey, now in his 80s, expressed hope that identifying the DNA source could finally solve the case, urging authorities to leverage these technological advances. Boulder Police Statement. In December 2023, the Boulder Police Department announced the case is ready for DNA testing once validated technology becomes available. They emphasized collaboration with DNA experts, suggesting a strategic pivot toward forensic breakthroughs. While no definitive resolution has emerged, these developments hint at a potential turning point. The combination of persistent investigation and evolving science keeps the possibility of justice alive, even as the case nears its 30th anniversary. Conclusion. The JonBenet Ramsey case is a tapestry of conflicting theories and elusive suspects, woven together by evidence that both clarifies and confounds. The intruder theory, with its DNA and physical clues, offers a tangible lead. Yet the identity of that unknown male remains a mystery. The family involvement theory, driven by the ransom notes and anomalies, raises haunting questions but lacks a forensic backing to close the case. Suspects from the Ramseys to John Mark Carr have come and gone, leaving behind a trail of ruled out possibilities. Today the case endures as a cold but active investigation, buoyed by modern technologies and the faint promise of a DNA-driven answers. For JonBenet's memory and for a family and community still seeking closure, the search for truth continues. One tip, one test, one step at a time. If this story got you hooked, and I bet it has, don't miss out on more cases keep us up at night. Subscribe to Ontario Cold Cases wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, or that little app you love. New episodes drop daily, peeling back the layers of Canada's mysteries and beyond. We hate for you to miss a single one. Thank you for listening. This has been Jay Nicoll for Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. because every case deserves answers, and every victim deserves justice.